Dukeneye amahoro, dukeneye amahoro, dukeneye amahoro, dukeneye amahoro, dukeneye amahoro mu bantu, dukeneye amahoro muri Afurika, ku isi yose dukeneye amahoro, dukeneye amahoro.
And contributor, Mr. Justin Bahunga, for his input. We've been just having a couple tech issues. So thank you so much for bearing with us today. Again, we were speaking on the United Nations 7.3, which is calling for the withdrawal of Rwanda from all positions taken in DRC. And we again spoke on the dangers of using a single group or a single tribe as a pretext for this war and aggression on DRC, and how we understand that it will have lasting historical impact on the people, the same people that the Rwandan government claims to be protecting. So Mr. Bahunga had just been explaining to us the really complicated history of citizenship and nationality and borders of it's very hard to describe them because they're not Rwandan, but people of Rwandan ancestry who migrated into the Eastern Kivu regions for hundreds of, years. Yeah. There was different waves. Some came through Belgian colonialism, some came as refugees from the original monarchy, which was a feudal monarchy. But yeah, so I will give my word back to Mr. Bahunga.
Just were cut off. I mean, they're just part of the what it came to be called Congo.
Yes, yes. So if you want to finish your thought off, Mr. Bahunga, and then we can close off the show for today. I really think there's particularly really young people do not seem to understand the impact of this pretext will be. I will say, as somebody who grew up Rwandan, but with more of the stigma that is tied to post-genocide, to the Hutu people, this idea of being your nationality, your ethnicity, being what is judged before your individualism, is not just dangerous, it is so limiting. It takes so many opportunities away from people. And it really, to me, robs potential from the same people you may be claiming to championing or whatnot. So
yeah, one small thing also I would like to add about we didn't talk about the FDR, but just very short, telling Parliament that FDR is not a threat to Rwanda. That if ever they even try, they can't stay 1 hour in the Rwandan territory. And that's what they do, is like a thief who comes and steals and runs back. So he himself said it is not correct. And up to the Congo, there have been so many joint operations, especially during Kabila time, to fight a joint operation to fight the FDLR. And this Major White 2 is a Kimia 1, Kimia 2, and also later they jointly carried out raids to kill one who was some of the top leaders of FDLR, including Mudachumura and this other one, I think Africa. And so, and also, even during the time, I mean, they arrested, I think, the one who had of intelligence, the one who was the spokesperson, and delivered to Rwanda without any form of law being followed. Again, this is just a pretext. And of course, the top leadership of FDLR, they went to Rwanda, including this man who was the head of, I don't call his name again, was the founders of FDLR. They are in Rwanda. They got a good position. So you cannot really. It is just a sheer lie to pretend that FDLR. And number two, there's the doctrine of going to defend your country. Another country is not accepted in any way or form. So that's probably, and so I think the whole politics is just. I think one profits from the presence of FDR. If they were not they would have a problem. If one day they rose up and they found that there's no FDR. Like people don't understand. I'll quote this: that there was at one time in 2003. There was a kind of mediation between FDR and the Congolese government, and also Rwanda was invited. But it was made by this Catholic mediation body called Center Gidio. So on the 31st of March 2003, they had prepared a declaration statement, which was to be signed by FDR, Congo government, and Center Gidio as a mediator, where according to that statement, to that agreement, that the FDR had agreed to sign a declaration declaring that it has stopped the war and it condemned genocide committed in Rwanda, and that it wanted to work as a political organization. But then, but the condition was actually they had to liberalize the opening of the political space for them to participate. But it is the Rwandan government refused to come. Like it happened in Rwanda. No. That's 31st of March 2003.
So it's not a lack of trying. There's been options placed on the table
so they were supposed to meet in
resolve this issue
between the FDR, the government of DRC, and Rwanda, but Rwanda didn't show up. So the presence, with the so-called presence of FDR, is a weapon, and I'm sure they would not be happy if the FDR said, "Now we have stopped. We are no longer an organization. We have just disappeared." We just have a serious problem. So that's what I want to say about FDR. That one, Kabarebe and other people have stood before Parliament is not a threat. Number two, even attempts have been refused. Even you remember Kikwete, the Tanzanian president, said, "Why don't you talk to them?" He said you're going to have. It was threatened without death threat. And I'm telling you, there's this mediation, which was refused. So there is no intention whatsoever, and this served as a pretext rather than a real reason. The real reason is occupying the Eastern Congo, and they continue to loot, and also to have this expansionist minded actually the king will go where you went. I think there must be this megalomania of being top of the world.
Yes, there's definitely a very strong supremacist ideology behind this idea that not only do we need to expand, but we will expand and rule over you. There's been some rumors, I'm not sure how well they are, that within some areas that M23 has captured in northern Kivus, they've been moving in new tenants. Literally the definition of expansionism, and almost like a neo form of colonialism, but within Africans themselves.
But I think, but it's madness because I can imagine, as I told you, this area is 4 times the size of Rwanda, and you cannot just and unlike Rwanda, this was Zalendo. These are even when armed. You can't just impose yourself as it happened in Rwanda. It's just madness. And you know, before Rwanda had forged relations in the terms of Great Lakes region, as I was talking about, the way could resolve this problem without going into war was the creation of economic community of Great Lakes. Where we had the secretariat was in Rwanda, the research institute, the agricultural research institute was in Burundi, the energy research was in Congo, and so we're about to sign an agreement on free movement of people and goods. And we had a bank, a development bank, BDGN, the bank with the Great Lakes region.
Wow.
We have
We've moved back
resolved
so
the whole
much.
issue. I used to go for meetings in Gisenyi with PGR. The border will be open for 24 hours. We would go for nightclubs in Goma and come back in the morning. So this would have resolved an issue without going into war. We had another organization called KBO, Kenya River Basin Organization. That was Rwanda, Burundi, Uganda, and Tanzania. Again, to develop together. So this would have served in resolving these issues of movement of people. I was saying, it's just using force in this culture of violence, which I think is very necessary for people to show that the violence doesn't pay. That there should be really a military end to this, to show that group that violence is not worth trying.
Yeah, no one has a monopoly on violence, and
exactly. But they think, unfortunately, this group thinks that they can fool everyone, they can fight and defeat everyone. So that philosophy had to be stopped. That people can live together without fighting. That we can live without being dominated or dominating others. That power can be shared and the diplomatic, the democratic way. And of course, I think the other solution is having democratic institutions in Rwanda. All this madness cannot happen if the democratic system was working in Rwanda. So there would be counter powers to stop this bellicist, belligerent attitude towards neighbors.
Very true. Well, Mr. Bahunga, we've been speaking for quite a while now, so I think we could end our discussion today. I think we spoke on so many things, and I do love speaking with you. I learned so much. I learned how to actually look beyond what I see in the open and start to challenge power, but particularly start to even challenge these very long-term I don't organizations that I used to believe have direct impact and direct power, and starting to realize that actually it's more of a shared responsibility between those organizations and then the direct people that these issues impact. Like, for example, I just happen to be of Rwandan diaspora, and I think being able to speak about this, analyze it, give our feedback is really important in being able to find and create a long-term solution for both our people. These days, when I look at the Sahel region and I look at that new, I think it's called AAS or something, there's a federation between three countries. And I look at that and I think to myself, well, why can our region also not go back to some sort of federalization, particularly where the people have freedom of movement? If we understand these borders are artificial, they were not always created by us, then we can also take part in fixing it so that we can have a better future. I would love to know that if I ever have to go back to live in that region, I want to live with all my neighbors. I don't want to live fighting in war. And I want everyone to understand that a good quality of life is actually dependent on your neighbor also having the same and stability. So if you could give us your closing statements, and we'll see you next time, as always, to keep speaking on this.
Thank you, first of all, thank you for your compliment. And thank you for inviting me. I feel so happy when I see young people who are interested in knowing our history and our problems, and also discussing how we can resolve them. For me, my closing remarks is that this pretext for the government of Rwanda people to know and to start by thinking about the havoc that is being committed in the DRC. Think of the 2.6 million, but the more people, children who have been deprived of their schools who have been destroyed, and means lives destroyed. I saw a child running with the high exercise book, and it struck me. It touched me where I was going. Without school for 2 years, without dying in these camps, and is man-made disaster, not nature, but human-made. To think about that, and also to think that when you use an ethnic group to oppress others, you are making that group a target of hatred. And that when you say of hate speech, it comes mostly as the Banyamulenge ministry have been committed. And thirdly, I think we can live, as we are saying, I agree with you 100%. We can live together peacefully. And it is the benefit of each one that to live together in peace. And I was saying in Rwanda that a Tutsis peace will not happen unless a Hutu has got peace. And the Hutu will not have peace unless a Tutsi has got peace. And I know, and there are some who are extremists, but those who can, the majority of people are good people. They are with meaning. And you remember the saying of Martin Luther King. He said, "This generation will repent not because of wicked few, but of course the good people are the majority. Good people who keep silence." Mm-hmm. So if there are very few, we can't stop them. But also, I think it's important to think about it that we have to end the culture of violence. People think that the violence pays, and the cause and that very few and cause problem to everyone. I think we have to unite in the fight of stopping that culture and let the culture of peace prevail over the extremist group, which thinks that it is above everyone, more intelligent than everyone, more subtle than everyone, then it can over the rest. It's a very dangerous philosophy. And you want to disturb the peace of everyone with this wonderful region of Africa. No, thanks once again, and see you next time.
You too. So thank you so much for spending the time this afternoon with us. Again, remember, please share, like, and leave a comment for us. And as always, Mr. Bahunga, thank you very much.
Thank you
have
so
a good
much.
night
I'm so grateful.
Thank you for the lessons. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Sorry, Patrick?
You can continue. Okay.
Okay. So like I was saying, this concept of national interest, I never used to take it very seriously because I don't think I fully understand what it did mean. Because when you are raised on a basic education of politics and on the world, you do really believe in this idea of everyone is playing by the same rules. But once we began speaking about national interest, I started to understand why some states even go as far as to get proxies or other players to make decisions and do things for them. Because in the long run, the damage to the image of their country does not matter as much as the national interest of what they're protecting. And this year, I really saw this with a conversation on canals and routes across the globe of trade routes. And that's when I understood the importance of canals and roadblocks, trade blocks. And so, for example, at the start of this year, Panama Canal, America was putting lots of pressure on the country Panama to sell certain parts of within the Panama Canal to BlackRock, which is an American corporation. But this was the first time we saw, for example, the Chinese government itself come in physically and block the sale of these businesses from from Hong Kong. I believe it was a Hong Kong owner who was going to sell property or rights to the canal for billions. And the Chinese government physically stopped it. And this is when I started understanding this concept of national interest. You have a government that's always claimed non-interference, non-international, they claim we only stay within our borders. But for the first time, there was such a direct challenge to their trade sovereignty and trade rights that they finally, oh, excuse me, got quite a dry throat. But I think they finally starting to realize that we need to rise up, get slightly more uncomfortable, because we do need to challenge what seems like American aggression to their growing power. So what do you believe this might show, particularly in our region of the Eastern Kivus, where we know the strategic minerals for the growing tech, what people call the tech industrial revolution? There are things within the Kivus that are necessary for these great powers to be able to either just survive the oncoming power politics or to be able to win them. So how do you see these great powers leveraging, or do you still believe they will always kind of sit aside in the shadows and just using the proxies?
Thank you. And
it's quite a it's quite a convoluted.
No, very interesting. I mean, I think it's very important for people to know that how the Kagame, his regime, has played its politics or its interests, which I think is not in national interest when it comes to the Kivu, but the personal interest in the sense of staying in the power and doing whatever it wants to keep in power, depression, whether national or transnational. And there is no other way you can explain that a small country like Rwanda, a small 13 million, 26 square kilometers, which is actually the 1/4 of North and South Kivu, is more than 124,000 square kilometers. North Kivu itself is about 65 thousand square kilometers, when in Rwanda is 26,338. And in terms of resources, of course, in the center of the world for these critical minerals. In terms of economic power, Rwanda is one of the most dependent countries in the world. So you'd ask yourself, how will a small country, small in its size, very poor, aid dependent, can afford to invade and overrun and change power in a different country, which is the Congo, which is the area is 2.4 million square kilometers, that's 90 times the size of Rwanda, which actually the richest in terms of minerals. Some called it a geological scandal on the planet, unless that country is supported by stronger powers than itself. So, and you will know, and there was a report, UN report of 2001 about the plundering of Congolese resources, mineral resources. It was, they found there were 85 multinationals and 57 companies that were exploiting the resources of the Congo. And it was clearly saying that these minerals are the engine of the wars. And also that Rwanda and Uganda have become the outlets of these international markets. That's now 24 years ago. And also they were suggesting sanctions against these two countries, especially the leadership, because they said the leadership of these two countries. Why is it nothing has been done 24 years down the line? We also know that this instability in Eastern Congo is man-made. Is man-made. It is not a divine soul, and most of these groups have been financed or funded, like the M23 by Rwanda, to make it unstable and make it easy for these multinationals to get cheap minerals outside of the Congo. So in terms of national interest for the other countries, again, when it comes to international level, we spoke about international politics. If there is scramble for these resources, I always say there was scramble for Africa in the past, but now there's a scramble for the resources of Eastern Congo. And you will know, if you compare now, you talk about the switch to green energy. You know, the Middle East used to be the center of the world because of petrol. And you know the politics of the Middle East. Now it is shifting to Congo, which, for instance, the Coltan said they have to go about 65% with the world reserves, cobalt, name it. So it seems to me that the Rwanda is just a middleman. And actually, Kagame said it. He said, they are accusing me of letting this mineral go through my country. He said, if I did stop them, I would have a problem. So he agreeing that, and this passage is what these international companies, and these companies are supported by their governments, how Kagame becomes untouchable. Can do whatever he wants. There is no way who can explain to me that such a small country can go away with violating international law, being in terms of, I was reading about the Freedom House, that in terms of civil and political rights, Rwanda has got to 20 for this last year, 21% in terms of observing or respecting civil and political rights.
That seems high.
But it's still 2010.
That seems high. That seems high. 21%?
Yeah, 21%. Yes, 21%. 21%. And still it is a donor darling of the it's a donor darling of the West, which are the champions human rights. I was saying recently there was a contract within the EU for doing business in minerals. In June 2000, I think, in the 3, there was EU Rwanda Business Summit Forum, and then with such a low level of respect for human rights. So when it's coming to national interest, I would say that for Rwanda, even these minerals, I mean, I don't see, apart from Kigali, apart from few individuals, I don't see how the wealth from the Congo has profited the ordinary person, the ordinary Rwandan. And so when you come to Kivu, then you come to Kivu, again, we speak of the pretext of protecting the, we shall talk about it, I don't know what this occasion, the next occasion.
Yeah, actually, we can start digging into that. Yeah.
The pretext that the FD, threat of FDLR, the exclusion of Tutsis in this area. So, in sum, I think even the fact that these measures are not being implemented, and that these other countries are weighing how much they would lose if they did indeed put enough pressure on Rwanda to leave the DRC. And I'm sure Rwanda is also the regime, not why when I say Rwanda, I think is not right. That the President Kagame knows very well all these hesitations, all these interests that he plays around with them. There's no way you can explain it. He's not a madman. He's intelligent enough to know how to play this game. And that's, I think, what is happening. But the worst is that, I mean, that's what pains me. all these wars, you have got more than 2.6 million Congolese displaced. You have got so many who have died, and the children who have not been to school for the last 2 to 3 years, who have lost their homes, home destroyed, and then you claim to be Pan-Africanist. You claim to be what human person to be. So it's mind blowing to understand how people can be so ruthless, so lack so much empathy, especially if you have been a refugee yourself.
We're coming from the same background. We're coming from the same historical context.
And I was saying the capture of Goma, I said now they're counting about 9,000. Now they have destroyed all the camps of the people. They have nowhere to go. They have nothing to help them. They have the Goma, which is normal to be a supply line to help these people, is not working. The routes are being blocked. So when we come to about national interest, it's not neither national interest of Rwanda because it doesn't profit Rwandans. Many Rwandans are dying there. They're dying. And again, as I was saying, it is how much do you consider as something that will force you to withdraw or to stop? If you don't care how many people die, you send other people to die. They are dying. They're dying. So again, as I was saying, that the personalities do matter when it comes to implementing the measures or conditions or the recommendations have been given by these higher international powers.
Yeah.
So that's what we were saying. Why is it possible when some of the conspiracy theorists see this man or somebody is just so powerful? But it is simply you are serving other people's interests, national interests. And one other thing, dictatorship, it was to stay in power. You don't depend on your on the people who are your nationals. You depend on other outside forces, which keep you on, so that you serve them because you want to stay in power.
Very.
I don't know if that's a work question, but
no, it does. Very, very true. In closing, I think we can talk about our sort of our closing subject in which you started to point to in giving excuses as to why Rwanda launched this war on aggression on DRC. There's different bases they give. Most of the common one is, of course, at first it was FDLR remnants are in the Kivus. We need to protect them from them. There was Congolese government is unable to administer the region. We had historical boundaries, something about the European cut their land. And most common one we have is the pretext of minority exclusion from the Congolese government and Congolese social society. And this pretext particularly is losing ground. More and more, actually, I'm seeing very many young, for example, young Congolese who are from the Tutsi tribe or who would be labeled as from the Tutsi tribe, actually being the ones to counter that pretext of being excluded. They're now actually very proud to call themselves Congolese, very proud to say, no, do not use our name to fight in this war, particularly the ones who are in the Congo. And so I would like us to speak more on this. For me, whenever this pretext of minorities is brought up, one of the things I think about is there's a pressure, for example, for the Congolese society and Congolese government to take back, for example, I believe they say there's about 200,000 refugees of ethnic minorities, particularly Tutsis, within Rwanda who are from Congo. And there's a lot of pressure that they need to go back home. They need to be safe. They need exactly the human rights, and they need to return within dignity. But when you remind the Rwandans saying those things that there is a little bit over 500,000, some people even go as far as to say maybe 1 million Rwandan Hutus within Eastern Congo who are also refugees, who are also who have no homes, and who also want to go back to Rwanda within dignity, within participating within social society. that's almost mocked or seen as as nothing. But at the same time, we are expected to really take this idea really seriously. The idea that even though Congo is a country full of about, I think, 450 tribes, so most people are minorities in the sense that there is no overt majority tribe that takes over everyone else. Yes, they are places where different tribes are more centered, are more of a majority, so they might have more of a of power in regional power in those areas. But from what I've seen, the propaganda that Rwanda tries to place on DRC is of a really extremist country that does not welcome or want to live with anyone who looks or speaks differently from them. What are your points? Do you have any points you'd like to add, or I'd like to hear your analysis on this subject as it's continuously brought up regardless what happens.
One, I think in terms of, even if it were true that there were people of who are Rwandans who are same same, I don't know, whatever, same culture, values, same culture, same whatever. This cannot justify Rwanda to invade another country to defend that group. And indeed, in our Organization of African Unity, which was founded in 1963, Article 3 there says that we must respect the borders set by the colonial powers. And there was actually a report by eminent personalities in 1979 set up by the Organization of African Unity to the study about Rwandan genocide and the surrounding events. And one of the recommendations, they said they urged the Organization of African Union, which is now African Union, that there is a problem in the doctrine of the government of Rwanda, then RPF, a new doctrine of saying that they can intervene in other countries to save, to protect their kin and the kith. That was a key. That doctrine is very dangerous. Mm-hmm. And saying that actually this doctrine has created another notion among other people that there is a Tutsi Hima plan to rule over the region. So it has brought up that. And that's what we are living today. That this doctrine is a very dangerous one. It's going to cause the problems in Africa. And I was saying Congo has got 90 borders. And all our borders, you have got tribes cutting across. But there is only on Rwandan side that there is this problem. And if you looked at Congo, I think personally, my experience that has been the most accommodating country in the region. The Congolese are most welcoming, as I know them. They don't like war. The Congolese I knew in my time. But the problem is that it is, as I was saying, the deliberate policy of Rwanda to go and loot the resources, and then the pretext would be how do you justify that? You want to defend a certain group. So I was saying that's in a case to it, but it's not true. When saying that Rwanda was a part of it was taken away, what unless you mean to say that the kingdom of Rwanda was responsible, or an regime in Rwanda to defend any truth wherever he is in the world. So we're talking about Uganda. There's Kisoro, is people speaking the same language, all similar to Rwanda. That's one. Secondly, how the part which he says was a part of Rwanda, and then actually Rwanda would go to that level. What was Rwanda in 1900? Even until 1900, the central royal kingdom of Nyanza had little control on other kingdoms, in the north and northwest. people will tell you, Congo will tell you that at one time, Changu was a part of Congo. In Rwanda, part in Mutara, in Dorwa, that part was part of Uganda. So if you went into where these kingdoms, when there was a fighting and there was interfighting, you would take over this kingdom, you would defeat it back. And indeed, where I come from, someone was making me aware that the Bunyoro Empire used to come to Rwanda. So can then now claim Rwanda. And where I come from, there is a name of where I studied primary school is Kababito. It means a place of Babito where the ruling class in Bunyoro. So will they come and claim Rwanda? So you cannot say that we have touched your feet fighting. And by the way, these kings, most of them, they're just going to steal cows and also to take over. They say beautiful women and so on. So you cannot know them on that. But then you come back to Congo. So there is this in 1910. There was an agreement between Belgium, Germany, and Britain to set finally the borders between Rwanda, the Belgian Congo, and Germany. By that time, it was under German occupation or whatever. So, and that's why a little bit when they cut the border, first through Sabinho, Nyiragongo, it took over in the Bufumbira, came that. But that is a small part of North Kivu. As I told you, in North Kivu is about 65,000 square kilometers. And the areas where we have got people speaking the same language like us, or called the Hutu and Tutsi, is Ruchuru and Nyiragongo. And these two are not more than 5,000 square kilometers, or 6,000 square kilometers. And that's where we are. So there, and even then, you had other tribes other than people who are said to be Nyarwanda. And of course, at that time, actually before it had borders, the people were moving to and fro without any thinking of borders before they were set up. So that is one. So you have got a special area of Okisha where we had the Tutsi and the Hutu living with other communities. But then you had the other area of Masisi. Masisi was inhabited by Nyarwanda went there through a program of the Belgian colonial power, where they want to go to work in their plantation and the mines, both in Kivu, so North and South Kivu. So the problem was that when that was between 1926, 28 to 1956. So there was a planned, organized movement of Rwandans to go to settle in Masisi, to be able to work in the plantations and the farms of the Belgian settlers. So the problem came now that over time, the Rwandans or people from Rwanda, or called the implanted, came to be the number came to be bigger than the Congolese who are living in Masisi. But of course, you had other ones who went to Congo by just mere migration, through migration, clandestine immigration, but they also had people who went as refugees in 1959. So the issue now in the Congo now is not, it was against those who call themselves indigenous and those who call them transplanted, who are called to be foreigners. So the problem was between Rwandans of origin, whether it is Hutu or Tutsi, who were said to be foreigners, but it was not exclusive.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
Was that what they called the Kanyarwanda War?
Kanyarwanda War, very, very interesting. What was 1960? Actually, again, so the issue was now that you find that, for instance, in Masisi and Rutshuru and Nyiragongo, 70% of the population, at least 70%, are all people Rwanda speaking. But as when they call themselves, the Hutus call themselves, they don't call themselves the Banyarwanda, they call them Bahutu, and the language is called, they call it Kihutu, not Kinyarwanda. And they have seen the Tutsis now call themselves the Banyemera, and that their language is Kinyemera. Very different from the Banyamulenge, who were there a long time ago, there is no question whatsoever about that label that should be, that they are foreigners. So what the problem comes about the Kanyarwanda now is that you have the people speaking in Rwanda who have become a majority in an area we say to be Bahunde. There are many tribes, but the big one, the big one is called the Hunde. They have got the Bahunde kingdom. So when it comes now, after independence, when it comes to elections, then there would be this kind of exclusion because those who call themselves indigenous would want to exclude the Rwandans, the Banyarwanda, whom they call foreigners or transplanted. So now there was now a fight between the Rwandans who were being excluded, and so there was eruption of fighting between the Hutu youth and the other groups. And so they go to Kanyarwanda, but I was saying these troubles were not trying to expel Tutsis. It was Rwandans that were taken as such. And this came again in 1964, the election. There was also another troubles, 1965. 1993, there was also a fight where you had about between 7,000 and 15,000 died on both sides between the Rwandans and what's called the Banyarwanda foreigners. And that's in 1993, Mobutu had to send special forces in Masisi, called the Masisi, to quell down this revolt. And there was, of course, reconciliation, but they had those about 15,000. And once again, it was not something that was against, that the fight with the Congolese against the Tutsi.
No.
Now, so that's, in 1993, I've got a friend who told me, well, Tutsis, who told me that they fled, they fighting as Tutsis going together with the Hutus, lying away from these fights. So, and what they forget about exclusion, again, to show you that it is far-fetched. There have been inter-community strifes everywhere in the Congo. You have got 70 million displaced in the Congo. Those are not Tutsis. Now, what actually is, you have to remember, the best example to have not excluded is that from 1969 to 1977, the chief of staff of President Mobutu was almost like Vice President Barthelemy Bisengimana. He was the second most powerful person in the Congo. He was a refugee, not only one of the people who were born in the Congo, but he was a refugee who was studying at Rwanda University when troubles came, said in the Congo.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
He's from Changu, he's a refugee. This gentleman called Mangachuchu, who owns this big mining company in North Kivu, is a refugee from Chibuye, one of the richest people. I think he was a senator in Kinshasa. In Masisi, as I was saying, it is said, I quote, that the big farm, the farmers, the big farms, we talk about 213, 500 of those farms, which are almost half of Masisi, I belong to Banyarwanda, rich Banyarwanda. So you have got one who have become ministers, who have become provincial members of parliament. So and of course, what was very interesting, I mean, it was actually good for them, is that when in 1969, 1972, they are most educated by the Hutus who went actually looking for land. And so they had better positions and more influence than the rest. So for me, that there is conflict between intercommunity conflicts is not unique to Kivu. It's not unique against the Tutsi, but rather what has happened now. Because actually in 1990, when RPF started fighting, it went to recruit now.
Yes.
From North Kivu, on the Tutsis. And I
think that's where the division, the division of that Banyarwanda class within Congo really started.
And of course, exactly when 1994, when our people, the Tutsis, the Hutus came to fed from Congo, they're saying actually, someone else will be saying, what are you doing if your people you have been recruited to join their people, so therefore you should be going to join them. So this created, so actually the RPF has created enmity, not only between people in Rwanda, but also between the Rwandan communities, those who are said to be Rwandans in North Kivu, in South Kivu. That is why you find, as we were saying, I listened to Banyamulenge, they are being used by the Rwandan government just to and loot the source of the Congo. The same to Manema Tutsi in the north, who are saying they are just being used they are being used to be by Rwanda to come and loot and also to occupy areas for their farms. So
yes.
So what I say, and of course, I think you have heard the speech of that was saying these invasions have co-exacerbated inter-community hatred. So
yes,
why they do it. But now imagine now, people have been, if 2 million people have been displaced, who have been killed, and you're saying we are killing them in the name of the Tutsi excluded. What does it create? You don't need to say hate speech. You are creating conditions for people to hate others.
Yeah, just in their hearts, just in their minds.
Yes, so you have created now the division between the people who are what same language which is similar to Kinyarwanda, called Hutu and Tutsi, but also against the other communities. So we are not only killing the indigenous, but also the engineers, but also killing the people. And again, perhaps it takes long, but of course, the issue of nationality has been an issue in the Congo. Who is the national, who is not? That will take long, but I could have another occasion to talk about it. But this issue of North Kivu, because again there have been changing nationality laws from 1960. I think anyone Burundian or Rwandan who was in the Congo 10 years before independence would be a Congolese national, a citizen.
Well,
1970, specifically a Burundian and the Rwandan who was in Congo by the 1st of May 1950 and remained permanent in Congo is automatically eligible or can elect at independence in the 30th of when they got independence. Now, this law was changed in 1964, saying that to be a Congolese, you must have one of your ancestors, or you must be part of the tribes who were part of the Congo in 1908. That's when King Leopold, the government of Belgium did give the country to Belgium of Bisengimana and the other very prominent Rwandans community group. They was changed to be back to how it was at independence. And he left power in 1979 And if we went out of the favor of the president and the Rwandans, the laws changed again. Now it was even worse. They said you are one of the ancestors, one of the tribes, which you are part of the Congo in 1885 when they went at Barani conference. Now, and
so that's just gonna create more trouble and trouble.
More trouble. So, but the 1991, when they were the conference for, and again, when they had the election 1987, there was a problem because many Rwandans were excluded. Hutu and the Tutsi, by the way, because they said they were not qualifying as Congolese or Zairians. But 2004, after the Sun City agreement, they said that everyone who was in Congo at independence had been there for 10 years to qualify to be a Congolese. And it was confirmed in the Constitution of 2006. Now, and by the way, if you knew that when the Sun City Agreement, you had a president, one of the Munyamurenge, Azarias Ruberwa, was one of the vice presidents in charge of politics, defense, and drafting the constitution. And so defense, policy, and drafting the constitution. It was the Munyamurenge was vice president. So, and today, as we were saying, that the man commanding the 3rd Division, which is on the border with Rwanda, is Masunzu, is the Munyamurenge.
Yes, very true.
So now, so the problem, I think, what you can say can be is probably people who fled in 1962, 1973, might have a problem, but the others are covered by the nationality law in the DRC. But then, even if to get that, I don't have to fight for that. So
we might be disconnecting again, but then I'll see you again in a couple minutes. But then we'll finish up quickly.
Okay, can we want us? Are we going to stop here now?
It's quite abrupt, but it's giving us less than a minute or so. Okay, so we're ready, Patrick, on your end.
Okay, allez-y.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Radio TV Impinduka. My name is Sasha Kayinde. I'm here today with my guest, Mr. Justin Bahunga, and we are here once again to speak about the region, the Great Lakes region, and the ongoing war and escalation between Rwanda, M23, and the very Democratic Republic of Congo. So I will give Mr. Bahunga a chance to introduce himself, and then we will jump in. Welcome onto the show today. Mr. Bahunga?
Yes, thank you, Sas, for inviting me tonight. And it's a great pleasure always to have a conversation with you on issues that affect our region, particularly Rwanda. I hope and pray it becomes useful and help those who will be listening to us. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. And we do want to thank our viewers and always remind you to please share, like, and leave a comment. Those allow us to kind of see what. So today we're speaking about two topics. Our first topic is in regards to the United Nations Security Council number 2773, something they recently released. And another one is we will talk about the root causes or the pretext of root causes that are often given by Rwanda on why they need to launch wars of aggression on DRC, particularly the Eastern Kivus. So to begin with, we'll start talking about the United Nations Security Council. They released, I don't know how to, it's referred to as a clause, or it was called, it's on number 2773. And this this was a call on both Rwanda and the M23 militia to withdraw from all positions taken within the Congo. Rwanda was also to withdraw all support, military and non-military support to M23. And they were both parties to withdraw from Congo immediately, and most importantly, with no preconditions that they may claim that they need in order to evacuate the land. And so, me and just Mr. Bahunga today will speak about how far has this national security dictate been followed, and if it has or if not, what next? What can people with power in the region do, and what pressures can be added? So we can get Mr. Bahunga's opening comments on this. What were your thoughts on this? And in general, do you believe, does the United Nations Council on Security still hold enough political diplomatic power and pressure in this regard?
Thank you very much, Sasha. This resolution, which calls on Rwanda to withdraw its troops from the DRC without the preconditions, and decides on M23 that it should end hostilities and to leave and evacuate from the Bukavu and Goma, which it had taken, but so that peace can prevail in the Congo. But unfortunately, up to now, neither Rwanda nor M23 have complied to the demands and recommendations of this resolution. And I think it is good for everybody to be able to understand better, to understand the context and the importance of this resolution. Because we have had many other resolutions, but this one is particular because one, it is taken under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter on violation, on a threat to peace, breach of peace, and act of aggression. And it is important also to know how the process is done or goes through this council. Indeed, Article 39 of the Charter under Chapter 7, it's the council that determines any threat to peace, a breach of peace, and act of aggression. And it makes recommendations or decides on measures to be taken in accordance with Article 41 and 42 of the UN Charter. Article 41 is about taking non-military action or actions excluding force to ensure that recommendations and decisions of the Council are complied with to maintain or to restore international peace and security. And Article 40, it also states or stipulates that before taking these recommendations or measures, and under Article 41 and 42, the Council may ask the parties concerned to convert to resolution to recommendations or measures that the Council finds desirable or necessary. Then the Council also has to make sure and to follow those all decisions. And as I said, Article 41 is the measures now non-military to ensure that this country, the parties concerned comply with recommendation decisions.
I see.
And of course, I said the Article 42 is about now using force. What has happened this far, and that's why I think it is important to understand the importance of this resolution. It is that now the Council determined that what the actions of M23 and Rwandan forces constitute a threat to international peace and security in the region. That is important. And the other thing we have to take into account exactly again is which provisional measures before taking the other two options of sanctions. This was to ask Rwanda to withdraw its troops from Congo and stop supporting M23. And for M23 to end hostilities and to withdraw from all the areas that it occupies, and also to stop para-administration that's put into place. As our listeners will know or remember, is that wherever M23 has occupied, it has put its own administration. What we realize now is that indeed, as I said, both Rwanda and M23 have not complied with the recommendations, provisional recommendations as made by the Security Council. Meaning now, as I said, these provisional measures have been made. Now they have to meet again. I think we have meet the next week or in the next week, I think, to realize or to examine, to assess whether Rwanda and M23 have complied with these recommendations and the provisional measures. What automatically what would follow next, as it would be to make or to adopt sanctions against Rwanda. That's where we are. Now the next question is.
I have actually a quick question to that, just for clarification. So this resolution came with absolutely no sanctions, no punitive measures. It was just a clear request, a diplomatic request.
As I said, there is a process with the UN Security Council that one to determine that indeed is a threat to international peace and security. The second step is to tell that Article 40 to talk to the parties concerned and make provisional recommendations of what they have to do. And the Security Council asked Rwanda and the M23 on what to do. So now the next step would be for the Council to sit and realize or be told or make an assessment and say, we are sure that these recommendations have been not taken into account. And that's when they can go the next step. That's what I'm saying. Probably the next meeting of the council will be now to decide on next step, which should be under Article 41 now of sanctions. That's why economic sanctions, but there are other measures, all measures excluding military force, which can be used to make the countries or these groups comply with their provisions. So, and then after that, if they don't do that,
Okay. Yeah.
then
That makes
there is
sense.
recourse to force. But of course, the question is about implementation. Whether would they, what sanctions would they decide on? Sanction, that is one. Number two, which sanctions are they going now to apply? And then, so that's about where the issue is now. But I was saying it would seem to be long overdue. Why did it take so long? When, for instance, because the case of Ukraine, it was immediate and robust. But at the same time, we have these decisions does not to prevent any individual country or countries or governments to take their own measures. And that's why you have seen, for instance, the US has put sanctions on individuals who are said to contributing to the situation of insecurity in the DRC, including members of the Rwanda government, including the Minister of State Foreign Affairs, Kabarebe, and also for the leadership of, in the leadership in the M23. I think about the chief generals in Rwanda have been sanctioned by the US. But other countries, it seems to be that Europe, the EU Commission might be trying to study how also to apply its sanctions on certain individuals. But how the process at the UN is. So the next question was saying how is it going to be? How far has it gone? What's the next step? And then step I was saying that's the process. The next step is would they now comply with, since we know for sure they have not decided or have not complied with these provisions. What's the next step?
I see. Well, thank you very much for that clarification. I think if you don't come from a background of law and international affairs, sometimes it can be really hard to piece together all the players who are in the background or whatnot. So that was a really great breakdown. I saw a couple notes today here and there that Walikale, I think it's a region within Eastern Congo, was liberated by Congolese people. So it's very interesting to see that they were given a political, almost diplomatic chance to, well, to spare themselves from next steps that have to be taken. But this act of aggression is almost unshakable for some of the decision makers, particularly in Rwanda. So I do struggle with a double standard that's applied sometimes to African nations. Of course, I understand it's part of the great power politics and great power games, but it does seem very unfair that Rwanda has been at this almost as long as the Ukrainian and Russian war has been ongoing, but we have such a different pace in justice and decision making. But I think the next thing we can speak about is who does have the power for pressuring these implementations or pushing for these implementations? What can parties both inside the country and outside the country do? What can people like us, for example, add to the pressure that may allow this resolution to come?
Fantastic. That's a very good question. Actually, we see actually on the next what happens next. Why is it like one likely to now and the M23 to comply or not, and why not? The whole point revolves around national interest. We have seen what has to be done because it is an act of aggression. There is a breach of peace. It's not actually a threat to international peace and security, but it's a real breach of peace. And it is indeed an act of aggression. But then why did it take so long? Why is it not acting like the case of Ukraine? That is power politics. So because we come to implementation, it depends on the power politics, the balance of power between those who support one side or the other. And so it delay, we look at in what interest should I apply the pressure? So the implementation depends on the nature of the issue for each country in terms of its interests and the willingness of each and everyone to force the culprit, the violator, the perpetrator, to conform to the norms. So what you can say from here is that definitely there is a kind of reluctance on some members of the international community for the interests to apply pressure on Rwanda and M23 to abide or to comply with what should be done in the case of aggression or in the case of breach of peace. And also it depends also on individual states, because you may have certain countries that when they value or when they assess, they might find that compliance is more costly than non-compliance, and may decide to not to comply with the resolution recommendations. Let's take the case of Rwanda. You might have the pressure, but Rwanda may decide, and when you decide that for us withdrawing from Congo is worse than staying on. And you will recall in one of the speeches of President Kagame, he gave an example where asked him to leave Congo. He was saying it is like there's an old woman. Someone went to kill her, and the killer asked her, what type of death would you like to be able to have? And instead, the old woman spat in the face of the killer. So he said, me also, they are trying to ask me to make a choice between two types of death. So he might find that to leave Congo is death, to stay in Congo is death, but they might find that the death by staying in Congo might be better than the death of going back. And that might make him not comply, despite all indications for us and other people, or that he should comply. Number two, it also depends on the nature of the internal system. In a dictatorship, one person decides, and that when one person decides, then it's very easy to do whatever he wants, especially in a dictatorship when there is no consultation. He might have a wrong decision because he has not consulted enough, or he has only followed sycophants. People want to agree with him. Whereas in democracy, the first thing is that before, for instance, starting the war, you would have a meeting between the politicians with the military officers and decide what is worth taking that risk. And also in other places that the parliament might have to have a word in it. But with the case of Rwanda, where you have one person deciding, and that person might be someone who is what do you call it? Someone who is what the word an aggressive foreign policy. Someone who the one name said who likes confrontation, and the one time he said he likes confrontation. That may decide about compliance. Number three, I think also by knowing the power politics, you might play with that power politics thinking, well, if I go on for some time, then they might let me go. The case of Rwanda, where from 1994 to now, there was always a kind of let go, laissez-faire with regard to Rwandan policies. So it might be this kind of impunity might inform him to say, let me keep on. They get tired, and then I can go on and stay in the Congo. So, and also the personal personal trait, someone who is ambitious, someone who wants expansionist policies, and especially if there is no counterpowers now to stop him, then that might make it difficult for the implementation of these measures. So, and then the other what I was saying is that with the case of Rwanda, you might find the consequences, might find it not worth giving up, because we have seen one example again we can give is that is stopping cooperation with Belgium. It doesn't care about how many people will be affected by this stopping of the cooperation. Other countries that people might actually have said, don't do it. But for him, he doesn't care about what happened to the rest of the population. But might be just interested in saying, let me punish people because they have not agreed with me. For those reasons, one, the personality of the person, the system in the country, the international system, it might not comply with these resolutions or these recommendations that anybody would have thought it would be important for the country, to stop supporting M23 and also withdraw from the Congo.
Okay, thank you so much for that. And you know that that almost individualistic viewpoint you would get from a dictatorship really doesn't leave a lot of room for planning, a lot of room for changes if things don't go as planned. Everything is being decided again by one mind. You spoke about Belgium, and it also reminded me about how at the same time that Rwanda is claiming to not care about its relationships with Belgium and the European Union and other European states, the changes within America, particularly Donald Trump's government, are also affecting him. So both Belgian and USAID are being disempowered in the country, both at the same time, when they play such a large role in social supports like healthcare, I forgot what word they use for that, but when nations in Europe give aid or claim to give aid. So it's been interesting to see the impacts of those things have not yet been felt, I think, by the administration in Rwanda. But soon, all these things are gonna come together. And I think, well, for me, I hope it puts pressure on these things we call, like, for example, Parliament and other holders of power in Rwanda to at least try and rebel slightly, to try at least, because if for example for the Kagame and the ruling party who makes the decision, dying in Congo is better than dying at home. But is that the same for them as well? Is that the same for all players in Rwanda? And I feel like because it's a dictatorship, we rarely get a chance to hear from any other any other voice. So there is a perception that's formed, I think, of Rwanda of everyone agrees, everyone is together on this issue. Another thing I wanted to mention, you always speak about.
Add something if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
What you are saying about the internal system. You remember when he had a meeting with so-called representative of the civil society, where he was saying they want to tighten their belts, and the people just clap. You'd imagine at what level people can be to clap that they want to tighten their belts further. They have already tightened their belts, and you tell them I want to tighten your belts more, and people just clap. That again shows how the system is being built such that there's no control over the executive, and that executive, unfortunately, is one person with the President Kagame. So that's why I call it mass suicide. But going to the Congo, I don't think really in the best interest of the people of Rwanda. And And if people can clap and even humanly speaking, you see people just clapping and congratulating themselves that such a town has been taken, not not taking into account how many people have been displaced, how many people have been killed. In Goma, they say now about 80,000 people have been killed in the attack of Goma. People just jubilate that this has happened. I find it extremely dangerous, not only unhuman, but unhuman, but also very dangerous for such a culture of not feeling empathy for other people who are in problems.
Or being able to understand that you may also be in this similar circumstance. It's at times it almost comes off delusional. It's like you cannot get away with crimes of this degree forever. There comes to a point where there will be accountability. Another point I wanted to share is you always speak about national interest, and I think before I learned about national interest, actually, Dr. Bahunga, just to let you know, you might hear the stream kind of stop, but we'll just continue, and it's still ongoing, so no issues.